This election is a fight for good versus evil. Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs. Do not grow weary in well-doing. The fight continues. You guys know what that is? Of course, that's Ginny Thomas's text to Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, around the January 6th insurrection and the 2020 election. It has come into view in the last week or so that 29 text messages from Ginny Thomas to Mark Meadows, in which she is doing everything in her power to try to encourage him to stop the election, to stop the peaceful transition of power, and keep Trump in office. Hey everybody, I'm Carolyn. Welcome back to another episode of As I See It. Today we're going to talk about Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny Thomas, who is the author of these text messages, and what this means for the Supreme Court, what this means for Clarence Thomas, recusal, impeachment, all of the things that a lot of you are wondering about. So Ginny Thomas is a very active right-wing conspiracy theory, election overturner, fraud, and big lie promoter and supporter of Donald Trump. We've known this for quite a while. That's not a crime. Just because she's married to a Supreme Court justice doesn't mean that she's not allowed her First Amendment rights. She's not allowed to believe in her causes and act according to her beliefs. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody is saying that there is a problem with that. The problem that we're all having is that Supreme Court Justice Thomas sat on the Supreme Court overseeing cases in which she was involved. Now, there is a federal law that says judges, including Supreme Court justices, are supposed to recuse themselves from cases where there might be a conflict of interest, whether it's financial or whether it might involve a family member. It's really windy outside. I don't know if you can hear it, and you can see my RV is rocking. But if you notice it, that's what's going on. We're having crazy gusts right now. It's a mess in here. So that is the issue. The issue is not whether or not a Supreme Court justice or a politician or a president or whatever can have a spouse who has opposing views and is involved in advocacy and activism according to their beliefs. That's not the issue here. She's allowed to do that. The issue here is that the Supreme Court justice didn't recuse himself from cases which had a direct impact on his wife, on these texts that we now know about. In January, Justice Thomas was the only justice to dissent in a case that Trump brought to the Supreme Court, in which he tried to get all of his White House records on the day of January 6th withheld from the January 6th investigation. He tried crying executive privilege. I don't want these communications to be seen by the public. I don't want or by the January 6th Commission for that matter. It wasn't even about the public seeing them. It was about this investigative body. He didn't want to release his records and communications to the people investigating this insurrection. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. 8 out of 9 judges said, no, you know what? You don't have a case here, Trump. That's not executive privilege. In the presence of a crime, you can't cry executive privilege and keep this information from the investigative committee. The only justice to dissent to that ruling was Clarence Thomas, whose wife was texting members of Trump's inner circle on that day. So federal law says they're supposed to recuse themselves. However, and this is just mind-boggling to me, the Supreme Court does not have a code of ethics. They're basically self-policing. Can you imagine? The highest court in the land. I guess they're supposed to be so righteous and so like above partisan politics and above the phrase of the normal human beings that they can police themselves. Kind of like big oil. Kind of like big corporations in America. Oh, they can police themselves. So there is no code of ethics. They are responsible for recusing themselves if they think that it's morally right to do so, or ethically right to do so. So while everything I saw, this federal law on judges' recusal does also apply to Supreme Court justices, because they are a self-policing body and because they largely go by their own rules, there's nobody really to enforce that. So if there is no code of ethics, it's up to Chief Justice Roberts, I guess, to do anything about it. That needs to change. I read that Congress did impose some code of ethics, but they're not really followed. I mean, this is kind of a mess. I read a dozen sources and there's all kinds of conflicting information about code of conduct for Supreme Court justices. I guess maybe in the past they didn't need them. There is no way it can be argued that Clarence Thomas did not know what his wife was up to. There is no way that anybody with a conscience and anybody who was committed to doing his job and staying neutral, or at least appearing to stay neutral, would have sat on the cases that he did and ruled on the cases that he did. And he chose to, for whatever reason. Maybe he didn't want to recuse himself because he wanted to make a difference. He wanted to protect his wife. So there's a quote of a speech in 2011 in which Clarence Thomas said, quote, "We love being with each other because we love the same things," he says about his wife. "We believe in the same things. We are focused on defending liberty. So I admire her and I love her for that because it keeps me going." End of quote. Clarence Thomas loves his wife because they both believe in the same things and they're both focused on defending liberty. So if his wife was out there fighting to save democracy, which in her mind she thought she was doing, because I guess she really thought the election was stolen, which brings a whole other issue about mental health. But if she really believed that, and they both believe in the same things, and they both believe in defending liberty, do you really think they didn't talk about this? So did Justice Thomas not recuse himself because he wanted to stay there and use his position to defend his version of liberty and her version of liberty? Or did he not recuse himself because maybe he's not as far down the rabbit hole as she is? And did he not recuse himself because he knew that by recusing himself and the investigation into January 6th continuing, his recusal might look like an admission that he knew something? That's something to think about too. So there are calls right now for impeachment. Everybody is saying he needs to recuse himself, but there's no policing. There's no accountability. They are self-regulating. Even if they do recuse, they don't have to tell anybody why they recuse. So that needs to change. This is a really big eye-opener, I think, for all of us about the Supreme Court. No code of ethics, no outside oversight. And where do we go from here with the highest court in the land being compromised in this way? Where do we go from here? We'll talk next about impeachment. Leave your thoughts below. I'll see you soon.